Another edition of the Dean Legge Show, this time Sunday night before the game with the Gators, a huge game for Georgia and Florida both. The Dogs opening up about a 6-point favorite, and then that number falling from that number to between 3.5 and 4. So still favored, but when a line moves like that, it's certainly something that you want to take a look at and be cognizant of. Are people disbelieving in what they've seen from Georgia over the last 6 weeks of football, or 7 weeks, whatever it's been, or are they suddenly big believers in the Gators? It's hard for me to get real riled up about Florida, having watched them so much. I do think that they are a group that fights till the bitter end, but I don't think they can win the SEC. I'll say that. They're going to have to prove that to me. So that's the part of this thing that is a little bit, not mind-boggling, but I think it's something that if you're Georgia, this is a game that you should win, but you definitely could lose. And it's going to come down to the basics. I mean, every game Georgia has played this year, they have been the team that's been the better team. They've been dominant at times, particularly in second halves. Florida has really had a lot of ugly games. When you look at their game against Miami, Kentucky, Auburn, even to some degree the South Carolina game, where South Carolina outplayed them for three quarters for sure, if not 3 quarters and a little bit. But Florida came out and won the fourth quarter big, scoring 21 straight points on Carolina, and that really hurt South Carolina, needless to say. So I think when you look at the Vegas lines, that's something that I really follow closely. If you can't tell from the first a couple of minutes of me talking about this, I thought this thing would be anywhere from 5 to 7, and it turns out it was 6, and then it moved. When you get into those situations, you wonder, well, does Las Vegas, when they set it at what they set it at, were they right from the beginning? Or do the bettors know more than Las Vegas does in this thing? Or the other question I wonder is, are they getting too caught up and wild up into what the people on ESPN Game Day say, and the media kind of proclaiming Florida the victors of the East before they've even played this game? Georgia's the better team. I don't know who will win. I suspect it will be the Dogs, but there's no guarantee. I think if you are concerned about this game, you're well within your reason. And I think a lot of that has to do with the last 2 games. I mean, obviously it has to do with the last 2 games, because the games before that, Georgia was blowing everyone out. I mean, with the exception of the Notre Dame game, where they certainly statistically blew them out, Georgia has won every game they've won this season has been by, I think, 21 points, with the exception of the Notre Dame game. So, and obviously the loss to South Carolina, a 4-turnover day for Georgia, just bad. And anytime you turn the ball over 4 times, anytime you have a negative 4 turnover ratio, you're going to lose. And Georgia has proven that over the last 10 years. It's happened 3 times in that time period, and they've lost every single one of those games. But moving forward to the game this week, Georgia has a lot of assets. There's a lot of doubt about Jake Fromm right now, but this team tends to play well when its back is against the wall, and it is. There's no question. Look, the season's on the line. This isn't just a big game, a rivalry game, Georgia's biggest game of the season. This is, they're not going to lose this game and come back and win the East. They may win it and still have a hard time winning the East with what they've got left on their schedule, Georgia. But they're not going to lose this game and figure out how for Florida to lose 2 more. I mean, they're not going to lose to Vanderbilt, Florida, and they're not going to lose to Missouri. Not the way. Or they could lose to Missouri. I thought that was possible 2 weeks ago, but not after the shit results Missouri has turned in these last 2 weeks, losing to Vanderbilt on the road and Kentucky on the road. They get the Gators at home, but I mean, they're just not playing well right now. Kelly Bryant benched in the middle of that game. Let's listen to what Kirby Smart had to say about the Dogs' practice this past week.
It was good tempo today, good enthusiasm. I thought that the guys, they looked a little fresher, because you get Sunday, Monday off, and you come back and get to practice on Tuesday. So I thought there was a good tempo, guys get their legs back, and try to work on a lot of fundamentals, blocking and tackling, and a couple phases of special teams today, and a couple opponents that we're going to play in the future that do some things that are just different, and try to expose our guys to it. And I thought the guys had really good attitude and good juice. So hopefully going to get some guys back from injury and get them back out there working. If you anybody want to ask about specifically, that's fine, but I don't know who you'd be asking about, so I'm offering.
I think basically you clean up the turnovers and you can beat anybody in the country. I mean, Georgia has proven they have the ability to win every game they play, unless they have a bunch of turnovers, and then they're going to get beat. I mean, the last time they were really thoroughly beat was last season. And I would argue that was more the LSU game than the other two losses. So this is really, to me, about making sure that you're playing well coming into Florida. I think they did have some pretty good practices last week. What matters now is what's going forward. I was talking about the challenging schedule in November. Let's listen to what Kirby has to say about this daunting run of games. I mean, I do think it was good if you're Georgia watching Missouri struggle, because running through all these games is going to be hard enough, but sticking Missouri right in the middle of it, and Missouri, I think, technically can still win the SEC East, amazingly, but they're going to have to sweep Georgia and Florida in back-to-back weeks. I'm skeptical that will happen. Here's what Kirby had to say about November for the Dogs.
Yeah, there's a lot of good teams on that schedule. I think everybody in the SEC's got basically the same schedule other than their crossovers. So we embrace that. We've known that for a long time. You know, it's like all off season we've worked to be a 3-part season. There's part 1, part 2 in the middle, and then part 3 was going to be the meat and potatoes. So we've known that, and we're building up this week to work on it and trying to look at a lot of different opponent tape to figure out what other people are doing to us and what other people are doing defensively and offensively to get better.
So it is going to be a very challenging November, but November won't matter as much. It will only get worse if you don't win against Florida. So that's a game that I think a lot of people, after watching the Gators play their first game of the season, were like, good God, these guys are terrible. But they've gotten better for sure. Their results speak for themselves. They're 6-1. They're ranked in front of Georgia. So that was not something I saw coming at the beginning of the season. But they've won a lot of games in spite of a really bad turnover disease that they've got, Florida. I mean, they've had a lot of turnovers in games that matter. Now against Townsend, and they had another 1AA school that wasn't good. They didn't turn it over in those games, but against Miami, against Auburn, against LSU, against Tennessee, those were just sloppy games, bad football. But with the exception of the LSU game, the Gators won, which is all that really matters at the end of the day. But that sort of stuff catches up with you. Just ask Georgia about a 4-turnover game, getting none back. Nonetheless, in the off week, Georgia's, dealt with it the way you normally do in off week. Let's listen to what Kirby had to say about Georgia's off week preparations.
Well, I was just saying earlier that in the off week we look at all our future opponents and we look at ourselves. So you do self-scout, you do your opponents' work, and you say what do they do that creates an issue, and then you also look and say what's been successful that we might be able to emulate with our personnel. So there's like 3 parts of that. But Sean's a big part of that. He has replaced Jay, who did a great job last year for us. He's very involved as far as advanced scouting, we call it, looking at opponents ahead of time, both defensively and offensively. He gives our defense an analysis of each opponent, their offense. So he's looking at Kentucky's offense and telling us what he thinks on Sunday night. It's just advanced work, but he's primarily with the offense and looking at things, and just an extra set of eyes to look at different ideas, things he's done. He's got a lot of experience, and he's been a part of a lot of successful quarterbacks and offenses, so we use that as an asset. But we got several guys that do those things.
So there you have it. Georgia getting ready for the Gators. If you're not a subscriber here on YouTube and iTunes, I encourage you to do so. Go over to dawgpost.com, dawgpost.com. Sorry for the abbreviated version of the Dean Legge Show tonight. I'm driving back from Orlando from where I saw some high school kids, prospects over the weekend. Saw plenty of Gators down there. Plenty of Ohio State fans. They were everywhere. That was a crazy part. But more Ohio State fans I saw than Florida fans. Honestly, that was nuts. So go visit the website. Make sure to subscribe. I'm going to link in the upper corner here Kirby's most recent press conference. You can listen to everything Georgia's head coach had to say. Make sure you subscribe. Again, tell me your comments below what you think about Georgia's chances this week against the Gators. Dean Legge from Dog Post. We'll see you over on the website.